system. The banks got together a long time ago and said it's too cumbersome to keep up with this paperwork. Let's all feed it into this electronic system, and then it can tell everybody who owns these loans. They're taking shortcuts with the legal system, and they're not producing the required documentation that is required under Florida law. What's the Florida foreclosure climate like right now? Well, maybe you've heard of what's called the rocket docket. It's happening a lot down south. They're scheduling up to 800 foreclosure cases a day. They're not waiting for the lender and the homeowner to work things out. They are saying, we are setting these trials and we are making these things come to a head, and we want a resolution. I see homeowners lose their home in 30 seconds, not knowing what is happening. Well, Judge, you don't understand. Just last week I was on the phone and I was talking to the customer service rep over at Wells Fargo, and we're talking about a loan modification, so I don't even really know why I'm here in court. Judge looks down and says, well, I hope you get that loan modification, but today we're going to foreclose upon you. Hope you work it out with Wells Fargo afterwards. Don't think that just because you're talking about a loan modification with your lender that that is slowing down the foreclosure process at all. Do not think that. It is a huge mistake. Maybe you've read the news and heard of these robo-signers. Well, what's a robo-signers? Well, revelations that lenders use so-called robo-signers who sign foreclosure orders for the lender but did not actually read them could give borrowers leverage to seek loan modifications rather than lose their homes. That's what we're talking about tonight, getting some leverage on the lender. The Ohio's Attorney General said Sunday that as many 40 state attorney generals across the country intend to open an investigation of lenders and servicers to figure out the scope of the problems with foreclosure documents. All 4 major lenders are guilty of this. They were basically getting secretaries, putting them in rooms, calling them vice presidents, and having them attest and swear to loan documentation that was placed in front of them that they had no idea what it was. It was a shortcut that they were taking in order to speed up the foreclosure process. A great quote from the Chicago Tribune, October of last year. Allegations of possible mortgage fraud against financial giants GMAC, JP Morgan Chase, and Bank of America read like a corporate thriller. Forged documents, fake Social Security numbers, phantom titles, disappearing paper trails, robo-signers, and mortgages sliced and diced so many times that nobody really knows who owns them. It's from October of this last year. The Florida Times-Union has this quote: the foreclosure mills, they take these cases by the thousands, and they do it by cutting all the corners and all the laws. When they file these things, they're all defective. They just don't have the elements that the law requires. There were 3 law firms that handled 90% of all of the residential foreclosures in the state of Florida. One of them is in the process of probably being shut down by the Attorney General's office because of the fraud that they committed in the foreclosure process. I just had a trial today down in Fort Myers for a client who was being, who that very law firm was the attorneys for, and they voluntarily dismissed the case the day of the trial because they realized that the paperwork that they had submitted to the court was fraudulent. Attorney General of Florida has launched an investigation into allegations of unfair and deceptive actions by 3 law firms handling residential foreclosure cases in the Sunshine State. The Economics Crime Division is also investigating for fictitious documents and fraud. In December of 2010, state attorney generals in Nevada and Arizona filed suit against Bank of America for widespread fraud and outright deception in dealing with loan modification applications. These deceptions included telling homeowners they had to be delinquent on their mortgage to be considered for a loan modification. In other words, the responsible people who came out and said, I got a problem coming up, we should work on this, they were basically told, I can't help you. The only people that got a response were the people who were in default. What happens when you're in default? Now they're getting ready to sick the attorneys on you. So now, you talk about negotiations, now they've got all the leverage. Now they've got you nervous. Now they've got you thinking you're going to have to appear in court. Other deceptions include the foreclosure would not proceed while a loan modification was pending, or that you'd be approved for a permanent modification if you made all the payments in the trial modification. Hear it all the time. I made every single payment they asked me to. They still put me in default after 6 months. And a decision on the modification would be made in a short time. How long does it take to make a decision on a loan modification? 8 months? 6 months? Are you kidding me? There's a reason why people are taking 6 to 8 months to get a loan modification response, because they don't want to give you a loan modification. They'd rather see you get foreclosed upon. Now I'm going to talk about fighting your foreclosures so you can try to get some leverage on your lender. There's a lot going on out there, a lot of fraud. The deck is somewhat stacked against you, and especially if you try to do it by yourself. Let's talk about a little bit about how you can fight back. Now, we already talked about why the promissory note is so important. The note's important because without it, the lender might not be able to prevail in a foreclosure case. The original promissory note is a live negotiable instrument. It's like a check, cashier's check from a bank. This is the IOU that a borrower signs. Lenders may try to foreclose with a copy of the promissory note instead of the original. If the lawsuit or foreclosure action isn't challenged, the lender automatically wins by default. It's like going to a bank with a copy of a cashier's check and expecting the bank to cash it. The judge isn't going to argue your case for you. The judge is inundated with these cases. If someone's not going to put up a fight, the judge isn't going to put up the fight for you. Most people don't fight their foreclosures. Over 90% of the people who are facing foreclosures do not seek representation. Now, what's an assignment of a mortgage? Well, an assignment of a mortgage from one holder to another is an exacting process that requires a proper assignment form. We talked about selling your loans in the securitization process. They need to assign it. They need to do the proper paperwork that's required for an assignment. Many cases of improper and fraudulent assignments of mortgages have been discovered. A lender must prove that they have the right to foreclose. It's called standing. It's a legal term for it. It can be proven through proper foreclosure paperwork or possession of your original note. An extensive foreclosure review of your documents can provide very useful information for a foreclosure defense case. The reviews that my office do regularly discovers fraud. We're talking about two different things. We're talking about fraud that could have occurred during the origination of your loan, when you were seeking to get the loan, or fraud that could occur when they are attempting to foreclose upon that loan. We go through the legal defenses here in the state of Florida. Well, the foreclosure lawsuit is filed against you. You should retain an attorney to represent you. The attorney should perform a forensic audit of your loan to look for violations. The attorney should also conduct an intensive foreclosure document review to look for errors and/or violations. Then, most importantly, the attorney should aggressively litigate against your lender to achieve the best possible outcome. In the old days, foreclosures, real estate law, it was not extremely litigious. The people that are on the cusp of this now are litigators, are people who are filing motions and aggressively litigating cases and making the lenders prove their case in court. The people that are represented by aggressive litigators are the ones who are getting the best deals and achieving the goals that they need to weather this crisis. Now, I want to say this, there is no guarantee of a specific outcome when you fight back on a foreclosure case. If anybody tells you that they can guarantee an outcome, it's outright fraud, and don't trust them. The only thing that is guaranteed, that if you do nothing, you will lose your home. Now, you don't have much time to act. Many people are saying that, well, I'm just going to maybe put it off for a little bit, put it off for a little bit. Well, time is limited with respect to foreclosure proceedings. You need to examine the best options available for your specific circumstances and take action to protect your family's well-being. The bank's not going to look out for you. You need to look out for yourself. I understand that 20 years ago, paying your mortgage was the most important thing that anybody could ever do. I see so many people today slowly bleeding to death because of their insistence to make that payment. You have to know what your rights are. I'd like to thank the Neighborhood Community Foundation for having this tonight, and of course all of the sponsors, and I'll open up for questions now.
Mic around, and if you just wait to ask